Hi, Dr. P here to speak briefly about robust games. Now, what do I mean by robust games? There are two parts to it. First, the more robust a game is, the better the game will work even if the players get a rule or three wrong. And you have to keep in mind, given 21st century reading habits and a general reluctance to read rules at all, players are likely to get things wrong. The second part is, how well will the game cope with physical mistakes and interference, such as accidentally bumping the table, a cat intervenes, someone gets angry enough, not necessarily about the game, to throw something onto the table? How well will the game deal with that? Will it be ruined entirely? Can it be put back together? And so forth. This is not like music. Music is played by not so expert musicians doesn't sound as good as when played by expert musicians, but you can recognize it. And often, if you've heard the music before, that helps. Games don't have much of that heard it before likelihood. Now, an example of a potential problem with robustness that I snuffed out. Fantasy Flight Games wanted to put a scoring track around the second edition Britannia board. They, for some reason, did not want to ask their clientele to write down the score, even though that is, in fact, how almost everybody does it. I said, no, a scoring track is too likely to get messed up in a 4 to 5 hour, highly competitive game. Somebody's going to bump it, somebody's going to mess it up, and it's not the sort of thing that's easily reconstructed. So instead, they used the scoring chits. So you'd receive scoring chits equal to whatever numbers you scored, because they still didn't want to force anyone to write down the score. Now, I've only once seen people actually use the scoring chits for scoring, but I imagine it happens quite often. It does change the game a little bit because you don't necessarily know the score of the other players the way you do when you score on a score sheet, which is my preferred method, but sometimes the designer has to compromise in some way with the publisher. Often, though, there's not much a designer can do to make their game more robust. But I hope this video might make people think about it and occasionally improve their design. What's the basis of robustness? Simplicity. The more complex the game, the more complex the components, the more opportunities to screw up, both in the rules and at the table. Now, simple doesn't necessarily mean easy. My motto is, a designer knows he has achieved perfection not when there is nothing left to add, but when there is nothing left to take away. But not everybody follows that. And yet, the simplicity will make the game more robust. So, robust is a virtue, but there are limits to what a designer can do. Thanks for listening.